2020 is a year no one expected to turn out the way it did due to COVID-19. The virus has changed the way we do everyday things, from grocery shopping to meeting with friends. Wearing a mask is now the norm, as well as social distancing. Sporting events are held with little to no fans, and education is now virtual. When we think of education, we think of in-person classrooms, where teachers are able to have the full attention from students. As the new school year began, that has not been the case for many places around the country, since we have seen learning shift from in-person to almost 100% virtual in some places. Here at Shippensburg University, we have a hybrid system where we have both in-person and online classes. For some students, their college experience this semester has been seen through the screen of a laptop over Zoom, while other students are able to go into a socially distant classroom and partake in a version of learning that is the closest thing to normalcy. With help from a new device called an OWL, students are able to see the classroom from the safety of their own room. It's able to provide an in-class experience through virtual means. Technology is something that has changed our society for the better, and when it comes to education, that statement couldn't be truer. From cell phones to computers, the electronic world has made days of researching with books at the library down to just hours from the comfort of your own home with your computer. Dr. Ted Carlin, a professor of electronic media here at SHIP, remembers his time in college and just how different it was compared to today.
Anything that we did was manual. And I guess that would be my biggest thing is that, back then everything was manual. You had to do everything yourself. Go to the library, right? There was no computer in the library. You had to go to a card catalog and fish through there to find things. The greatest thing ever was instead of you only had access to the newspapers that were there that they kept. But once they got this thing called microfilm or microfiche, where they would take pictures of papers and put it on these film strips, and you go into this little machine, pop your thing on the reels, one on each end, just like the audio recorder, and you'd reel it through, and then it would take a picture of the picture, and then, it would print it. Heck, we didn't even have photocopiers readily available. You had to pay for. Everything was manual. Like if I wanted to do my resume, right? I'd have to go and type it, take it to a printer and have it printed. So any little change, if you made a typo and you made 50 copies, you got to go back there and give them and start all over. So all manual. That's the best description of school and everything. What we're doing now with the internet and online it's fascinating. It's not my preferred way to teach, but you couldn't interview me either without this technology, right? I mean, we could do it on the phone.
Right.
So there are advantages in pandemics, or like I've been teaching online for 20 years in the summer, right? 1 or 2 classes. And that's not bad. You got a student in there. That's their only thing. They're probably working a job or vacation or whatever. And that you can focus on 1 or 2, but trying to do this stuff that we do now with 4 or 5 classes at a time, I truly sympathize for every student that I have, because it's nuts. It's just right. It's chaotic and it's not what you're used to. So we've gone to automatic, but automatic's not always better.
The importance of the library is not what it used to be, as now it's become more of a study and hangout spot than an area of intensive research with a large selection of books, CDs, and old VHS tapes. Due to the pandemic, our own library has been the host of various spaced-out classes in order to keep in accordance to health guidelines. The way classes have been set up this semester is something that most students weren't used to, and certainly wasn't something that the new freshmen were expecting for their first year of college. But like the freshmen, the returning students were in for quite a surprise, as what they've been used to in the past has now turned into something completely different. Some students, like Kendra Edwards, an engineering major, dislike the idea of all online classes and is one of the few that had most of theirs in person.
The semester's nothing that bad. It hasn't been really different for me because I have a lot of lab classes, so I've been mainly on campus for the whole time. I only have 1 online class and 1 that's been a mix. So the main difference is we're wearing masks, we're spaced out, but essentially, I'm still getting face-to-face instruction. I'm still seeing everybody on campus, and a lot of my other friends haven't.
Other students, on the other hand, think that online classes are a blessing. Brad Davis, a business major, is one of the students that has loved the switch to online.
Oh yeah, Zoom's great. I get to take my classes from the comfort of my own home. And based on social distancing policy, I can still go out and see my friends. I just don't have to interact with random people in my classroom, especially with group projects. That's a real issue that I think teachers don't really realize, is that when you do group projects with random people, you tend to fail.
It's safe to say that with the help of technology, schools across the world are able to continue teaching students. Unlike in 1918, when the flu pandemic decimated the country and halted the learning of millions of students. Similar to now, back then they followed the same practices of wearing face coverings and social distancing, eventually getting a hold of the pandemic and returning to normal life. For some cities, like New York, they kept their schools open and thought they would be able to monitor and treat children early if they showed signs of the flu. New York City had one of the lowest death rates on the East Coast when it came to large cities, and much credit comes from how they handled the virus by making people aware of its dangers, and keeping schools open was debatably a good choice as it helped keep children supervised. COVID-19 is different from the flu in that people don't have to show symptoms in order to spread it, but Dr. Carlin still thinks that if this pandemic were to have happened in the 1980s, schools would have been able to stay open.
You know, yes, but not obviously with technology. So if you go back, there was a great story that I read that was on Twitter, and it was New York Times, and it had to do with the pandemic, the flu pandemic in 1918.
Right.
And they showed all of these schools, especially elementary schools, that were meeting with masks on, that were meeting outside. So that's what we would have done, I think. I think we would have, and we should have done that from the beginning here. You know, if back in March, April, we all would have been wearing masks, right? You know, we've learned a lot about this whole thing and how everything, you know, but there are ways to do it, especially if you're outside. Yeah, it would be difficult when it was cold. So I'm not sure what would, you know, you would have to change the school year maybe or do something, but I think we could have done it. It would have been different. And trying to get into closed spaces like a TV studio,
Right.
you know, we'd have to do it like we do now with fewer people, but we could have done it.
With all these advancements, it helps to take a look into what is to come and what the future will look like for education. We're now in the age of online learning and seeing how learning can be taught outside of the classroom. We could see online learning continue more en masse and be implemented into a more regular role during the school year.
Well, I think for me, the number one factor that's influencing how we do education is money. So there's got to be some way that we deal with expenses better at a university. And I am the major expense. So, you know, when you're talking about a radio station, what's their major expense? No, it's not the music. They get that for free, right? It's the DJs that are the talent. And so what many of stations have done since deregulation in the 90s is fire most of their staff. Why? Because we can use computers to replace people, and you can pay somebody to voice track. It's what we do at WSYC. So when there's no DJ on, we put music and announcers and everything and record them. So you can pay one person to do the work of 8 people, just about. So in education, we've got to figure out what's the best use of money. Is it to pay professors and have people in classes? You know, is that the best way to do it? Should we have a hybrid approach? Should we have every classroom have an OWL camera or system so that you can be either there and pay less and pay more to get the experience on campus because you're getting more? You know what I'm saying? I think that sounds good. I like that idea. I mean, paying more for what you get, more of a, I think it needs to be more driven towards service of what the customer wants, right? I think if you want to pay for a full experience, parties, Greek life and all that, you should pay for that. You want to be here and socialize, then you get that. But we're not going to go back to not having any online stuff. It's just too cost effective, and too many colleges keep raising tuition every year. Why? Because it's more expensive to pay us every year. I think there's got to be a trade-off, and we have to make education more of a service industry, meaning what does, like, more a la carte. You know what I mean? Like, you want to do this, you pay for this. It's not a one size all. Come as a freshman to SHIP or Harvard and you pay $20,000 or $50,000. It should be various levels for the experience that you want. And I think that's the biggest thing. Technology is only going to get better. And the type of tools that we have. When I started, there was no Zoom. There was no all these cool things there wasn't even PowerPoint. So a lot of stuff is going to happen. Technology is going to get better and make the experience better. 5G is going to make it faster, right? So there's a ton of stuff that's going to happen. We've just got to figure out a better pricing model so that we're not charging you for something. Well, I can go over here and get it. We've got to figure out ways to make it, fit the customer's needs.
With the use of our phones and a database of answers at our fingertips, it's hard to see where we'll be in just a span of 10 years. And with winter right around the corner comes the talk of snow days. With the ability for teachers to use Zoom, it could be possible that the snow day will become a thing of the past.
Oh, I never have snow days. I've been doing it that way with D2L forever. When you have kids or asthma, stuff happens. So my son is in high school. He's a junior. And they pretty much said, your days of this snow day stuff are done. They gave him all Chromebooks. And so, that's how he's doing it now. But there's no excuse now. They went all in on technology. So now nobody has an excuse. So now, obviously, what the teacher does with that snow day, or what the teacher does, depends on the course and what you're doing. I can give you an assignment or just go on D2L and say, read chapter 4 or something, or we could meet. I don't know how that's going to work out, but it's just like with us having D2L for the past 15 years, it just makes it, if I'm sick, I can still have class or give you an option. I don't feel like we're just going to bail on everything.
As for now, all we can do is wonder and wait and see what is in store for future generations that are eager to learn in a technology-filled era.